Hello, this is Brian Foster coming to you on May 25th, 2021, and we're talking about the book A Wander in the Spirit Land, which is I am interpreting via Spiritism. And of course, this program is dedicated to tell you about Spiritism, tell you how Spiritism places you in the context of your physical world and the spirit world, since the physical world is a subset of the physical world. We've been talking for quite a while on the book A Wander in the Spirit Land, which was published in I believe, the early 20th century. And we're now just starting part 3, The Kingdom of Hell, chapter 19, Through the Wall of Fire. And now the spirit, Franchezzo, was a very intelligent, cultural, avant-garde type person who, when he died, he went to the lower zone, and then he built himself up because of the love of the woman he left behind, who still tried to and did communicate with him from the physical plane to his spirit plane. And now he has risen up a level enough to take part in a group of spirits that are going back down to where he was, maybe even below that, to help spirits who want to get out of this purgatory. Now, Spiritism, and let me bring this up for you, because this is what Spiritism tells us, that there is no such thing as eternal punishment. Hell really is a place that is true, but it's purgatory. People only think they have eternal punishment, but it's not true. When they change their character and personality, spirits will help them rise. And this is what Franchezzo will help. He'll go down and say, do you want to get out of this horrible place? Because really, it's the law of affinity. It places us where we fit best. And if you're a criminal and you con people and you lie to people, and you take advantage of people and you want to dominate everybody, well, that might be where you end up. But this is all, no, don't think this is controlled by some sort of nefarious organization that is against Jesus Christ. Jesus is in control of all of this. Now, he lets the inmates run the prison, right? But that's part of the punishment, because when you are in this horrible place, this dark abyss, as it's called in Spiritism, it's the opposite of the golden rule. Others treat you as you have treated others. And that should put into your mind something like, oh, this may not be the right path. I might want to change. This is not how I want to live. Well, if I'm cruel to people and I'm at a place where people are cruel to me, I don't like it. And that causes tremendous change. So all this serves a purpose. Remember, there's no such thing as punishment. It's all edification. Now, to us humans on Earth, who, our time frame is like a day or maybe a month, that can seem like punishment, but it's really all about teaching us. And when we go through life, learning lessons that we need to learn because of past lives or past wrongdoings. This is why the Earth seems so chaotic, because good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people, but there's always a good reason. And the poor bad people who appearingly succeed really don't. The law of karma works for the law of reincarnation, will work to teach them things they should not do. Now, let's get into the book. Let me bring this up. And we can read along. I know people like this, which I think is great. And this is part 3, The Kingdom of Hell, chapter 19, Through the Wall of Fire. This is Franchezzo speaking. The companion who was assigned to me in this expedition was a spirit who had been in this sphere before and who was therefore well fitted to act as my guide on entering this land of horrors. After a short time we were to separate, he told me, and each to follow his own path. But at any time either of us could, if needful, summon the other to his aid in case of extremity. As we drew near the great bank of smoke and flame, I remarked to my companion upon the strangely material appearance they presented. I was accustomed in the spirit world to the realism and solidity of all our surroundings, which mortals are apt to imagine must be of some ethereal and intangible nature. since they are not visible to ordinary eyesight. Still, these thick clouds of smoke, these leaping tongues of flame, were contrary to what I had pictured hell as being like. I had seen dark and gray countries and unhappy spirits in my wanderings, but I had seen no flames, no fire of any sort. I had totally disbelieved in material flames in the palpable form, and had deemed the fires of hell to be merely a figure of speech, to express a mental state. Many have taught that it is so, and that the torments of hell are mental and subjective, not objective at all. I said something of this to my companion, and he replied. Now let's see what he says, and I'll make a comment on it, because remember, just people say, first of all, I'd say is people say that, well, heaven is of your own making. When you go and when you pass over, you create your own heaven, and the same thing of you create your own hell. And there are sense to this, and the fact is that when you're in the spirit world, thought is action. So when you're in heaven, of course, now when you're in this dark abyss, you really don't know how to use your mind at all. But some people do, and they can use it to dominate other people. They can't create like you can in heaven. But let's talk about heaven for a second. In heaven, you can create with your mind. You can create your own house. You can create a lake if you know how to. If you've been trained, right? You have to learn how to create with your mind. So in essence, you have the ability to create with your mind. But in practice, you are the spirit that goes into heaven, and then you are inundated with other thoughts from other spirits around you and by superior spirits. So everything is kept in by the will of superior spirits. So this is very important. So this is all. So then you will adapt yourself to the will of other spirits, and then you will adapt yourself to that level of heaven you are in. Now you may make modifications to it, so on and so forth, but you adapt yourself. And that's also what he's talking about when he's talking about the things that are objective versus subjective. And in the spirit plane, things are subjective, meaning they're created by your mind, but they can be created by other minds, and therefore at that moment they could be objective, and to your mind they are of solidity, and they touch, you can feel. Now if you wanted to and you think about it well enough, you go through and you wall anything you want to do. But if you accept that, hey, this is the boundary of the wall, I like the way this looks at, and besides it keeps this picture up, right? Then that's the way it is, because that's what your mind wants, and that's what other spirits have created that building and put that picture there, or you put that picture there for a reason. Now this gets, so you kind of think in two different ways. Now, you're in physical world. Why? Why do you have to go to the physical world? Why can't we just live in heaven all the time and be good? Well, as your primitive spirit, you stop being in charge of primitive organisms, and you start learning how to get rid of your primitive emotions like hate and envy and anger, because those did pretty well for you when you were in a primitive soul, right? Trying to survive. But now you're trying to pull these things out. And therefore, we have to go through all these trials and tribulations to reform our character and our personality. It's all about free will. And the beauty behind all of this is by everybody going through this just immense, brilliant process, is everyone who becomes a spirit and becomes high spirits and angels in heaven, they all have their own little unique personality. We're not automatons. We're not robots that are just cookie cutter like ants, right? And then you can have a lot of very superior spirits. You know, these spirit angels, they all have their own character. Okay. So let's see what his friends, his companion says. Oh, wait, I went too far. Wait a second. He says, both ideas are in a sense right. These flames and the smoke are created by the spiritual emanations of the unhappy beings who dwell within that fiery wall. And material as they seem to your eyes, open to the sight of spiritual things, they would be invisible to a mortal sight. Could one still, in the body of flesh, by any miracle visit the spot? They have, in fact, no earthly material in them. Yet they are nonetheless material in the sense that all things earthly or spiritual are closed in matter of some kind. The number and variety of degrees of solidity in matter are infinite, as without a certain covering of etherealized matter, even spiritual buildings and spiritual bodies would be invisible to you. as an example, spiritual bodies. That's our perispirit, and that's kind of a certain covering of etherealized matter. So we cover kind of our encapsulation of our personality, our logical personality, which looks like a flame, right? In fact, he even uses this later in this sentence. And these flames being the coarse emanations of these degraded spirits. Oh, that's a different flame. But then our perispirit makes us look how we think we should look. Possess for your eyes an appearance even more dense and solid than for the inhabitants themselves. My companion spirit name was Faithful Friend, a name given him in the memory of his devotion to a friend who abused his friendship and finally betrayed him, and whom he had even then forgiven and helped in the hour when shame and humiliation overtook the betrayer, and when reproach and contempt or even revenge might have seemed amply justified to many minds. This truly noble spirit had been the man of by no means perfectly noble character in his earthly life, and had therefore passed at death into the lower spheres near the earth plane. But he had risen rapidly, and at the time I met him, he was one of the brotherhood in the second sphere, to which I had so recently been admitted, and he had once before been through the kingdoms of hell. So again, it's a person who's had experience. And again, it just shows you how you rise in heaven. You don't die and you go to this heaven and you're there forever and you play your harp and you just contemplate. No, when you go to heaven, there's work to do. This is Franchezzo's working, right? He's part of a team he's part of the team that's going down looking to help other spirits. And also, Franchezzo has risen, not just because he's a better person, but also because he went to school, learned different things. This is the way it is. And the same thing with each level of heaven. You go to school, you learn to be better, you improve yourself, you take part in tasks if you volunteer. If you don't want to work at all, if you're in heaven, you can just sit there and park for centuries if you so choose, but then you won't ascend. Okay, now, we now drew near what appeared like the crater of a vast volcano. 10,000 Vesuviuses in one. Above us the sky was black as night, and but for the lurid glare of the flames, we should have been in total darkness. Now that we have reached the massive fire, I thought it was like a fiery wall surrounding the country, through which all who sought to enter or leave it must pass. Now see, again, this is a mental construct, right? So this is the people down in this low level. This is below the crust of the earth, right? There really is in what the Spiritism calls the dark abyss. Above the crust of the earth, they call it the lower zone. Now, see now, Franchezzo, said Faithful Friend, we are about to pass through this wall of fire, but do not let that alarm you, for as long as your courage and your will do not fail, and you exert all your willpower to repel these fiery particles, they cannot come in actual contact with your body. Like the waters of the Red Sea, they will fall apart on either side, and we shall pass through unscathed. Again, this is true. This is a superior spirit. Nothing's going to affect them in this land, right? A very superior spirit. If they had an army, if a superior spirit in one of the higher levels of hell came down into this area and it was attacked by 10,000 spirits, there would be no contest. The 10,000 would just run away. It's all about the force of your will, and the higher you go, the greater the force of your will, which is they call in Spiritism, they say, especially in the books by G. Baowen, they say faith is measurable. Faith in yourself, in God, in Jesus, it's measurable in the spirit world. And the more faith combined with knowledge, which equals wisdom to a certain extent, is the higher, superior you are and the more powerful you are. And this is power to do good. So think about when I say power to do good and what these people can do with their minds, how they can go and help other spirits. And that should give you a very good signal of why we go through these trials and tribulations on earth, because we have to get rid of these primitive emotions. If Franchezzo says, I'm going to go down there and find a spirit that stole money from me, 20 years ago, I'm going to go punish him. Well, he wouldn't be part of this team. He'd be down right there with him. That's why Jesus said to forgive all. I'll carry on. Were any one of the weak will and timid souls to attempt this, they would fail and be driven back by the force of these flames, which are propelled outwards by a current of strong will force, set in motion by the fierce and powerful beings who reign here, and who thus, as they imagine, protect themselves from intrusions from higher spheres. Now, yes, so why shouldn't purgatory, the dark abyss, be organized? As I said before, Jesus Christ owns everything, right? God owns everything above that, of course, but they let these fierce and powerful beings reign there, and they have pretty good willpower, and they're not stupid, but they're mean. They're tyrants, and they believe that they can. And this is why this is why people do bad things on Earth. One of the reasons is they don't listen to their conscience, and they're influenced by other spirits sent by these powerful beings to turn people to the bad, because they want as many people in their sphere of influence as possible. Jesus and God allows this because we have to learn to filter everything with our conscience and to ignore. It's just like when your child goes to school and you have to tell them, don't listen to your other friends. They're always telling you stupid things. It's just like in junior high or middle school, whatever one you went to, when you're 13 or 14, you're old boy. I can't tell for the girls, but your friends are always giving you something stupid to do. They think it's a great idea, and maybe you think it's a great idea at the time, but it was really pretty stupid. Again, this is what we go through even as adults. We're being told by these inferior, ignorant spirits, go cheat that person. You're going to make a lot of money. Well, no, it's not worth it. Okay. To us, however, with our more spiritualized bodies, these flames and the walls and rocks you will find in this land are no more impenetrable than is the solid material of earthly doors and walls. And as we can pass at will through them, so can we pass through these, which are nonetheless sufficiently solid to imprison the spirits who dwell in this country. The more ethereal a spirit is, the less it can be bound by matter, and at the same time, the less direct power can it have in the moving of matter without the aid of physical materials supplied by the aura of certain mediums. So, again, this is the hierarchy of spirits. So the more ethereal, meaning the higher ratio of energy to matter, like Jesus is a perfect spirit. He is probably, I don't know for sure, but he's probably the vast, vast, vast majority, if not all, energy and very little matter, right? And then as you go down, you become more and more matter and less energy. And in the physical sphere, of course, we are completely dominated by physical matter and less energy. Here, as on Earth, we would, in order to move material substances, require to use the aura of some of the mediumistic spirits of this sphere. At the same time, we shall find that our higher spiritual powers have become muffled, so to say, because in order to enter the sphere and make ourselves visible to the inhabitants, we've had to close ourselves in its conditions, and thus we are more liable to be affected by its temptations. Our lower natures will be appealed to in every form, and we shall have to direct our efforts to prevent them from again dominating us. Now, again, you find this in other books of Spiritism, where spirits will go down into these lower zones and they'll have to concentrate and make themselves more dense, so the other spirits will think, oh, they're just like us. So now, when he says, and it will also, this will also affect us by the temptations. This could be with maybe not superiorly wheeled spirits from higher levels of heaven, but these guys, as wonderful as they are, God bless them, they've just recently gotten out of this, so they still have some of these tendencies that they have to guard against, right? So this is why they're saying, we got to watch ourselves, because they just came out of that condition, and that could be 10, 20 years. My friend now took my hand firmly in his, and we willed ourselves to pass through the wall of fire. I confess that a momentary sense of fear passed over me as we began to enter it, but I felt we were in for it. So, exerting all my powers and concentrating my thoughts, I soon found out that we were floating through, the flames forming a fiery arch below and above us, through which, as through a tunnel, we passed. Thinking of it now, I should say it must have been about a quarter to half mile thick, judging as one would by earthly measurements. But at the time, I did not take sufficient note to be very exact, all my energies being directed to the repelling of the fiery particles from myself. As we emerged, we found ourselves in a land of night. Now, again, this is a very basic thing you see in spiritist literature. You see in literature like this. You see in near-death experiences is when you go down, right? Because not all near-death experiences are wonderful experiences. There are bad experiences too. Is the light gets less and less, and these people are into darkness, and the as they'll say, the vegetation becomes more like thorns and dead. It's really not a nice place. But that's what it is. Now, when you go higher and higher into heaven, light becomes brighter and brighter. In fact, if you're not at the level of heaven that you should be, the light becomes too bright and you can't even go there. That's kind of how the law of affinity also works. And until you rise and are able to go into that level, you can't go there. And then when you can, then everybody looks normal. Before that, they'll look bright. They'll look like how we think angels look, right? Because it's mostly because they're so bright, because they reflect the love of God because of their exalted level. Okay, how far this country extended, it was impossible to form any idea, since the heavy atmosphere, like a black fog, shut in our vision on every side. I was told that it extended through the whole of this vast and dreadful sphere. In some parts there were great tumbled, jagged mountains of black rocks, and others long and dreary wastes of desert plains, while yet others were mighty swamps of black oozing mud, full of the most noisome crawling creatures, slimy monsters, and huge bats. Again, there were dense black forests of gigantic, repulsive-looking trees, almost human in their power and tenacity, encircling and imprisoning those who ventured amongst them. Ere I left this awful land, I had seen these and other dreadful regions, but truly neither I nor anyone else could ever really describe them in all their loathsomeness and foulness. So this is one of the things that I myself always resisted, thinking, oh, hell, yeah, hell can't be, is it full of monsters and looking and eternal punishment? Well, kind of, yes. It's not full of eternal punishment, unless as long as you are. Monsters are mostly spirits who look as they feel they should look, meaning that their bad tendencies make them look bad. People look as they are on their spiritual level. Of course, as you get higher, you get more and more beautiful. So there is now, but there is this dark abyss. You can call it purgatory if you want. And I'll repeat again, it's not so all those mean people, they can get what they deserve. We can punish them and they'll think they're there forever. No, it's for them to fully experience what they dished out in the physical plane. There's a reason. Everything is for edification. Jesus does not punish. He lets people feel everything that they had done in the past. For every action, there's a reaction. It's called karma. This is how it all works. Karma guides the process of reincarnation. So karma guides you if you're locked into a horrible family. Well, there's a reason for that. It could be all sorts of reasons. And I talk about that in my book, The Problem is the Solution. So, a plain covered with dust and ashes, as though all the blighted hopes, the dead ashes of misused earthly lives, had been scattered there. We followed this highway. In a short time arrived at a great archway of black stone hewn into large blocks and rudely piled upon one the other. An immense curtain of what I thought at first was black gauze hung before the gateway. On going nearer, I saw to my horror that it was made from spirit's hair, with the eyes strung like beads upon it. And most horrible of all, the eyes were alive and seemed to look at us imploringly and follow our every movement, as those striving to read our intentions in coming here. Because, are these eyes endowed with life, I ask? With soul life? No. But with astral life? Yes. And they will continue so to live while the souls to which they belong continue in the spirit bodies or envelopes from which these eyes have been torn. So that's really sad. So it just shows you that another person talked about this will, right? So the eyes have been torn. So that means that a dominant, one of the leaders of this part of hell, and of course, a lot of it's called the dragons, right? And they will lead parts of hell. Of course, and remember, it's not a well-oiled machine. You've got all these people that hate you and hate everybody else around them, are sarcastic, and only follow orders because they're scared of you. That's purgatory. That's the dark abyss. But these people, they can dominate a person and make them into a shape of a chair or a horse that they can ride. They can do all sorts of things to you through their dominant. Remember, in the spirit world, everything is thought. Everything is pliable, right? Very elastic, we could say that. It's a logical area. It's subjective. Therefore, a dominating will tells you in your mind that you are a horse or a sitting chair. That's what you will look like if you don't have the power to resist that domination. This is, and of course, God bless those people. They'll get out of that eventually. This is one of the gates of hell. I'll start reading again. And the custodian has a fancy to decorate in this way with the eyes of his victims. In this place, there are none who have not themselves been guilty that in their earthly lives of the most awful cruelties, the most absolute defiance of the laws of mercy and justice. In coming here, they're only intent upon finding fresh means to gratify their lust for cruelty, and thus they expose themselves to becoming in their turn the victims of beings no more ferocious than themselves, but stronger in willpower and clever in intellect. So let's give some examples who would go there. Stalin, Mao, Che Guevara, Fidel Castro. They're very, horrible people who killed many people. Who, they and think that they're smarter than everybody else. Well, they will be in a place like this. Now, eventually, they will rise. They will learn what they did wrong, and they will become a wonderful person. I can guarantee that. That's what Spiritism says. But it may take a while. Now, carry on. This is the city of cruelty, and those who reign here do so by virtue of the very excess of that vice. The wretched spirits to whom these eyes belong, with their degraded, stunted soul, germs still imprisoned in their mutilated bodies, are at this moment wandering through the desolation of this land, are laboring as helpless slaves for their spirit tyrants, deprived of even of the limited power of sight possessed by others in this dreary land. While between the eyes and their owners, there yet exists a connecting link of magnetism, which will keep them living and animated by a reflected life till the soul germ shall cast off its present envelope and rise to a higher state of life. And magnetism is the force of will, right? And so you have to think of magnetism also as you can look at hell as he's describing it, as this place. And these people have these mental waves that they control people. But you can also look at hell and heaven and the whole spirit world as this logical construct, right? Where there's personalities that have certain applications and certain levels of power given to them by their hierarchy, by their hard work, by their goodness, or not given to them by their not so goodness and by their ignorance. And that these logical constructs have power to see things, powers to change what the optical aspect of things are, what these things feel. So this is, you're going to go, when you die and go to heaven, you're going to go to a fantasy land that no fantasy book or science fiction book has even touched. You're immortal. You can't die. You create with your mind. What has even been close to that? And this is what Spiritism has brought. They give us these definite answers. And this book is from over 120 years ago, trying to tell us what is really going on. Now, most dismiss this out of hand, but the time will come when you will not be able to. So you should learn about it now. Okay, I'll carry on. While we were studying this horrible gateway, the curtain of living eyes was drawn aside, and two strange dark beings, half human and half animal, came out. And we took the chance to pass in unnoticed by the guardian of the gate, a gigantic and horrible creature, misshapen and distorted in every limb, so that the worst ogre of fable could scarcely convey to mortal mind a picture of him. He sprang out with a frightful laugh and horrible language upon the two poor trembling spirits, who fled from him in the most abject terror, but neither he nor they seemed able to perceive us. Are these beings soulless? I asked, pointing to the poor frightened spirits. Were they ever on earth? And the answer is yes, most certainly, but of a very low type of savages, scarcely above the wild beast, and quite as cruel, hence the reason they are here. In all probability, their means of progression will come from being reincarnated in a slightly higher form of earth life. And their experience here, which will be short, will give them the sense that there is retributive justice somewhere, although they will be apt to form their ideas of a god from their dim recollections of the powerful beings who reign in this place. Do you then hold the doctrine of reincarnation? And the answer is no, not as an absolute law under which all spirits must pass, but I do believe that in the experience of many spirits, reincarnation is a law of their progression. Each spirit or soul born in the planetary life has spirit guardians who from the celestial spheres superintend its welfare and educate the soul by which means it seems best to them in their wisdom. These spiritual guardians, or as some term them, angels, different in their methods and schools of thought. For there's no sameness anywhere, I am taught, and no absolute path upon which we all must walk alike. Each school of thought has its counterpart, its dim imperfection, reflection on earth, has the perfected system of the school and the highest teachers in the celestial spheres. And from these higher spheres, their doctrines are handed down to earth through spirits in the intermediate spheres. The end all have in view is the same, but each maps out a different path by which pilgrim souls should reach it. So let me stop there for a second. So he doesn't know. So these are not from anywhere high level of heaven. And he's seen spirits that have been in heaven for many, many years. And he's seen spirits that have been in these lower zones and purgatory for centuries and centuries, thousands of years. Therefore, he doesn't know. But that's not true. Each spirit has to go through the process of reincarnation. But as you get higher and higher, you do it less and less until you don't have to go on the physical plane anymore, because you are a pure spirit and you've taken out all your primitive emotions. Now, some perfected spirits come to earth, such as Jesus Christ, to help us, right? And there's other spirits who come too. Socrates, Lao Tzu, etc. And Buddha. These are very superior spirits that probably only reincarnate once every 1,800 years or so, if then. And in fact, Spiritism has told us that Socrates and Buddha are going to be reincarnated within this time frame on Earth to help us get to the next level, which is a planet of regeneration. Now, let me tell you something very important for those who say, the devil has power, these people have power. And they do have power over their willpower, stuff like that, but they have no power to cause anybody to be reincarnated. In fact, when he's saying, those two will probably be reincarnated pretty soon, it has nothing to do with the people in charge of this purgatory in which they're in. That is all done by directives in the higher planes of heaven. They decide, not anyone in the lower zone decides when reincarnation takes place. That shows you the limit of power, right? So, those who have a tendency to worship Satan better know the very limit of the power of that. They have power. I'm not saying they don't. They have no power to reincarnate or have people incarnated. They can go find out who was incarnated by searching out the world and look for that person. And in fact, one of the people who were working with Chico Xavier visited a hospital in Brazil, and in this there was this man who was very severely affected. He could only walk backwards, and his intellectual capability was very affected. And he was told by Chico, says, that person right there, you know who that is? And he said, no, that's Mussolini. And he wasn't put in this so much to be for a lesson, but to protect him from spirits who want revenge on him. They didn't want him to go through life as a normal person, per se, to use that, right? And then be obsessed and be completely intellectually battered by all these obsessors because they hated him completely. They should forgive him. I understand why, but they did that. Just put him in a new body, just to get him in there, and then they'll take him out and they'll put him back in again at some other time. So in order to really rise in the hierarchy, you have to change your character and your personality. And the most efficient way to achieve that is to come to earth, because you don't, if you're already in heaven and you still have something, and everyone does, right? Not everyone, but most people do, have some emotions and character imperfections they want to rectify. It's hard because heaven's a great place. You're with all your friends. You're never sick. You don't run out of money, right? So it's more efficient for you to go to earth and go through trials that you help set up to modify your tendencies. Okay, let me carry on. The guardian angels watch over the soul germ during all of what may be termed its childhood and youth, which lasts from the moment it first sees the light of individual consciousness till through repeated experiences and developments, it attains to such a degree of intellectual and moral consciousness that it stands upon the same level as its spiritual guardians, and then in its turn becomes the spiritual guardian of some newborn soul. Absolutely true. Hopefully, all of us at some time can become a guardian angel to help other people like other people have helped us. I've also been taught that the soul germ in its first stage is only like a seed. In fact, any other seed and the minuteness of its size and powers. It is, in fact, a spark of the divine essence, containing in itself all that will constitute the perfected human soul. Of its very essence, it is immortal and indestructible, because it is seed from that which is immortal and indestructible. But as the seed has to be sown into darkness and degradation of material earth in order that it may germinate, so has the soul seed to be sown in the corruptions of matter, first in the lower and then in the higher forms, which is exactly what Spiritism teaches us, is that we start out in control of very tiny primitive organisms, and then we go higher and higher until our little seed's soul learns how to control that physical application for what it looks like a bacteria or a virus or an ant or a butterfly, whatever. And so they start learning how to control until we are given the gift of being a free-willed soul, meaning we have our free will over just our instinct. Now, it's not like a line that just crosses, because everyone knows who's had a pet, dogs and cats, elephants, dolphins, they have some free will. And they can exercise that free will as they like, and that's be fine. But once you move over to a human-like animal where you have free will, then you're implanted with a divine set of divine laws. You should know right from wrong if you're cognizant enough to even understand that that's what it's trying to tell you. Probably very primitive spirits don't even know this. But that's why, as we start in these lower primitive forms, and what really helped us a lot by surviving and taking what we wanted to and killing others in order to survive, we had to change all that out. But that all has a reason, because it's creating our own unique personality. We carry on. Each animal is in itself the type of a soul seed, the human type being the highest of all, correct? And each seed will in turn develop to the highest degree possible for it through successive spheres and experiences. Some schools of thought hold the soul will progress more rapidly if it is again and again returned to material life to be born anew and in a fresh form each time, and to live over again the experiences it had missed, or to expiate in the mortal form the wrongs done in a former incarnation. The spiritual children of this school of thought will indeed be thus returned to earth again, and for them each new lesson will have to be worked out in earthly life. That is what Spiritism teaches us. Let me carry on. But it does not follow that this experience will be the lot of all spirits. There are other schools who maintain that the spirit spheres contain means for the education of the soul quite as useful and expeditious. Now we stop there. Education always goes on, but what the higher spirits have told us, what this person doesn't quite understand, is that the most efficient means of changing your character is through incarnation. You can change your character through just being in the spirit world, but that could be a very long process. But if that's what you want to do, the spirit world will be will be cognizant and they will be respectful of your free will. And with the spiritual children committed to their charge, a totally different course of sending them to gather experience in lower spheres rather than to earth will be pursued. They will be made to live over in memory their path of earth life and to expiate in the spirit the wrongs they've done in their earthly experiences. As each soul differs in its character or individuality, so it must be trained by different method. Else would all resemble each other so exactly that a monotonous sameness would result, and there would be none of that variety and contrast which gives a charm to earthly life. And I believe will still continue to do so in the celestial spheres. So he's right. So each different method, and then some people reincarnate rapidly, some people not. Some people have huge long distances between reincarnation. So he's close, but I don't agree completely. I have ever been taught, therefore, to avoid trying to find a general rule applicable to all spirits upon the experiences of any one community of spirits with which I may come into contact. Even in this visit we shall pay to this sphere, we shall always be able to see a fractional part of this immense sphere of evil spirits. Yet we shall traverse an extent of space far greater than if you had traveled over the whole of the little planet Earth, by which we have both come. In the spirit world, like draws to like by universal law, called the law of affinity. And those of entirely opposite natures repel each other so entirely that they can never mingle or even touch the circle in which each dwells. Thus, in our wanderings, we shall only visit those with whom, either from nationality or temperament, we have some germ of feeling, however slight, in common. So, that is the end of that one. And the next chapter is chapter 20, the Imperial City. So I'd like to, before I forget, and if you have any questions, oh, hello, let me get some more water here. For those who are interested in Spiritism, now on this broadcast, I'm showing you the not so wonderful part of it. But heaven is wonderful, and heaven is a place. And that's why heaven isn't that efficient to change your personality and character, because you're not going to be buffeted by dramatic events. You're going to be around, you're going to do what you want to do. You're going to be with friends. You're going to be, there's no malicious gossip, any of that. So if you really want to learn about Spiritism, I would start with, of course, the Spirits book. I'll show that in a second. But then, actually, you might want to start with this one. This gives you a quick overview. It's less than 100 pages. I have that on my site. Of course, you can get it in Kindle, paperback, or Audible. But it's on PDF on my site, nwspiritism.com, and that will download for free. Now, in the book by Allan Kardec, I think all of his books by Allan Kardec, you can just look up Allan Kardec space PDF, and you'll find all those books in PDF. You can also, on my site, click on his picture. It's up on the right navigation bar, the upper part. It'll take you to the FEB bookstore. You can order his book. And actually, I think they're a little bit cheaper there than they are from Amazon.com. Of course, you can get these on Amazon.com, but of course, the cheapest way is how I got them is on PDF. And you'll find them on PDF. These books, were published in the 1850s. They are all in the public domain. So I think that would be a really good way for people to get yourself a grounding in Spiritism. Now, why do I say it should be, one should do that? So what have I just been, I tried to explaining of the processes you go through here. Now, kind of here today, I'm going through the negative, kind of the harder lesson type processes, but they're processes nevertheless. And the processes on Earth can be perceived as extremely negative by us, because when bad things happen to us, who's the biggest whiny person of all time? Well, for a long time, it was me, right? When I lost money or something happened, I would say, oh my God, this is horrible. And I find someone to blame, usually not me, although I blame myself too. But then when I found Spiritism, I found that everything had a reason. And then now I learn from my lessons. I don't agonize over them. I go, oh, what did I do now, right? And this is, you cannot believe the amount of stress it takes from you when you look at yourself as a sculpture in progress, as being molded by the hands of artists much smarter than you are, and being guided, just like a kindergartner goes through classes, right? Doesn't even know they're learning. Somehow goes through and gets snacks and takes naps, right? That's us in the eyes of the spirit world. We're being sent that way so we can learn. So take these lessons to heart, welcome them, analyze what you've done wrong. Don't agonize. Do not agonize over it. Don't look back and go, oh, so sometimes I do that. I have to stop myself. It's not worth it. You just, what the spirit Joanna de Angelis, who helped Divaldo Franco, she sent a lot of books to Divaldo Franco's psychograph, said when you look at things you think you've done wrong, look at them as an arrow in the quiver. You shoot it in the forest. You don't look back. You analyze it, and you keep moving forward. That's how you do. That's how you need to be in life, right? When something bad happens to what you consider is bad, analyze it. Say, okay, something bad happened to me, or someone did something bad to me. I'm not going to do that to anybody else. I know how that feels. And don't hate that person. Just know that they are an actor in the play that played that part to cause you to have a certain stimuli to change your character and your personality. So now, instead of being greatly affected by any ill wind, you can be slightly amused and you can kind of laugh at it. And at whatever age you are, no matter how many opportunities you think you missed, you're always going to have more. You're immortal. You can incarnate again and again and again, not just on Earth, on other planets. So therefore, if you're old like I am, I still have my dreams. I'm right now thinking, okay, what do I want to do in my next life? What do I want to do in the spirit world? Is it a job in the spirit world I want? And this is why the more you understand, the more you can always work towards that intellectual curiosity and work towards what your goal is, right? Because Jesus says our prayers will be answered, but they're not answered here in this one life. It could be multiple and multiple lives. And this is where the spirit realm really kind of brings us together. I have other books that might be more pertinent to you, like Heaven and Below, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, and How We're Guided by Spirits, which gives you more detail from passages written in many, many different spiritist books. But the spirit realm kind of gives you the overview of the spirit realm, the physical realm, spirits, how spirits are guided, how the process works for them to ascend, how the process works for the physical spirit to ascend, how the spirit world guides the earth. It's a fascinating. Everything that's happening now when you see wars or these politicians, they're going through all this stuff, you just know that there's people pulling levers. Now, they're giving all these people free will. So the earth is now on a transition from a planet of atonement, where we pay for past wrongs, to a planet of regeneration. They can't get there until we have about over 50% of people being good spirits. Right now we have around 30%. So things are going to happen to help enlighten us and help us move that higher harmony and vibration. And that's how the whole earth will transform. It will just rise through a vibration, not just because of the earth itself, but because it will absorb the vibrations of the spirits who are in the majority and dominant on the planet. So we're going through a very spiritually tough time. And therefore, that's why I think every one of us should study and work hard, try to do as well as we can, try to be as honest as we can. Right? Nobody's perfect. I'm not asking anybody to be a saint. I'm asking just to do what you are able to, improve a little, but work, take some time out of your other work, your physical work, and work on this, right? Learn what's there. Learn who is Jesus, who is God, what is really waiting for you, why are you on earth? And the more you learn that, the more you can handle all these situations. So I want to thank everyone for being with me today. Please help other people. Please share this, and let's introduce Spiritism to more and more people. I think it will greatly help everyone. God bless.